There was this man who fell into a well. Well, not just any well, but one that was over 300 years old. And that's not all. The locals said it was cursed. They had tried to fill it in and even blow it up with dynamite, but it never worked. And then there were the bones. That's right. The last time someone looked into the mysterious depths of this well, they saw human bones. So why did this guy climb down into it? Was he trying to find out if the well really was cursed? Or was there something else down there waiting for him? Prepare for a spine-chilling tale. Man in the Well. It was a hot summer day when 24-year-old Eric Storm decided he couldn't take the heat any longer and made up his mind to go for a swim. The sun had been beating down relentlessly since morning, and by 3:30 p.m., the temperature had soared to almost unbearable levels. The air was thick and still, the kind of heat that clung to your skin and made even the smallest movements feel like a chore. He dove into the water with a splash, the coolness wrapping around him like a brief welcome embrace. For a moment, it felt like pure relief. His skin tingled as the heat was washed away. He swam around slowly, letting his arms slice through the lake's surface, his legs kicking lazily behind him. But as he moved farther from the shore, the initial coolness faded. The surface had been baking under the sun all day, and the water grew lukewarm, almost heavy against his skin. Just as he was about to swim back toward the shore, the sun dipping a little lower in the sky and the wind beginning to pick up slightly, Eric turned to push himself upward, ready to climb out and dry off. But as he reached for a smooth rock near the water's edge, his foot suddenly found no grip. A patch of slick algae hidden beneath the waterline sent his legs sliding out from under him. Everything went black. When he came to, he was underwater, disoriented and sinking. Panic surged through him as he realized he couldn't breathe. His arms thrashed wildly, his lungs burning, and his mind raced in terror. But luckily, after what felt like an eternity, he resurfaced. He climbed out of the lake and saw that no one had noticed his little accident. It was then he heard one of the lifeguards say something about someone drowning in the lake. Eric was shaken by the thought. Maybe that's why he'd slipped, because someone had pushed him. He scanned the area, but everyone seemed to be minding their own business. No one had seen anything, so they must have been wrong. But still, he couldn't help but feeling uneasy. As he walked back to his stuff, he saw a group of teenagers staring at something on the other side of the lake. When he got closer, he heard them talking about a well. One of the boys said it was cursed. Another said it was a good thing no one ever went near it anymore. But someone said, "What if we did go near it?" Eric's curiosity got the best of him, and before he knew it, he found himself walking towards the dark opening of the well. When Eric was much younger, just a curious boy with wide eyes and an active imagination, his father would often sit beside him during quiet evenings and share eerie, captivating stories about the infamous wishing well, an ancient, mysterious structure spoken of in hushed tones by the older villagers. It wasn't just any ordinary wishing well made of stone and rope. In fact, the wishing well defied all logic and explanation. No one in the village could say for sure where it had come from, who had built it, or even how long it had been there. It had simply appeared one foggy night, as if summoned by the darkness itself, standing silently in the middle of the old forest clearing where nothing had ever stood before. When the townspeople found it the next morning, the well was already filled to the brim with clear, glistening water that shimmered under the sunlight. Yet no one ever saw rain or a river nearby that could explain how it stayed full. At first, the townspeople whispered that it might have been the result of a witch's curse, an ominous relic left behind by someone who dabbled in forbidden magic and wanted to lure the desperate or the greedy into making dangerous choices. After all, the well bore an uncanny resemblance to those described in old folktales, the kind witches were said to use to brew their strange, bubbling potions under the cover of night, surrounded by twisted trees and chanting spells. According to local legend, passed down through generations and embroidered with fear and fascination, the wishing well had the uncanny ability to grant any wish whispered into its depths. But there was a catch, always a catch. Whatever desire you sent into the well would indeed manifest within 72 hours, no matter how impossible or improbable it seemed. However, the stories all warned of the same chilling truth. Every wish came with a cost, and the price was never revealed until it was far too late to take the wish back. Over the years, countless villagers had made their wishes at the well, each one hoping for something more, something better, only to watch in helpless horror as their deepest fears and darkest desires slowly came to life. The well's promises, though enticing, were always followed by the cruel twist of fate that led to suffering far greater than anything they could have imagined. A man wishing for wealth might suddenly find himself drowning in an avalanche of debt, or a woman hoping for love might watch her heartache unfold as her relationship turned toxic, all because of that single, ill-fated wish. Even though he knew all these stories, Eric couldn't help but wonder if the well was real. If it was, he would make a wish. Any wish. But it was probably just another fairy tale his dad had told him to scare him away from going near the water. Still, as he stood there looking into the well, he couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. He had the distinct feeling that this well was hiding something. Before he knew it, Eric found himself climbing down into the darkness. He remembered reading somewhere that if you climbed to the bottom of the well, your wish would come true. Sure, it was a bit dangerous, but how hard could it be? Once he reached the bottom, he would make a wish and get out of there as fast as he could. After what felt like forever, Eric finally reached the bottom of the well. The air was cold and damp, and he couldn't see anything in the darkness. Suddenly, he felt something wet trickle down his leg. He shone his flashlight upwards and realized that the bucket he'd been climbing in had a hole in it. Luckily, the hole wasn't big enough for him to fall through, but it was big enough for water to seep in. But that meant there was only one way out. He had to find another bucket or build some sort of contraption to climb out. As he looked around, he saw something in the corner of his eye. He walked over and realized it was a ladder. It was covered in moss, but it looked sturdy. Maybe if he followed it, it would lead him out of the well, and if not, it would lead him to something interesting. Eric started to walk down the ladder, but he quickly realized it was going down, not up. His flashlight flickered, making it harder to see. And just as he turned another corner, his light died. Now completely in the dark, he continued to walk down the ladder. He couldn't tell how far down he was going, but he could hear water dripping nearby. Then suddenly he felt something solid under his foot. He shone his light down and realized it was a bone. It was a human bone. He didn't know what to do. Should he keep going down? Maybe there was a way out at the bottom. Or should he go back up and get out of there? When Eric didn't answer, his mom started to worry. She had told him not to go near the well, but she hadn't stopped him. He was old enough to make his own decisions. And deep down, she knew he wouldn't listen to her anyway. She had seen the look in his eyes when he talked about the well. He was determined to find out the truth no matter what. She had the feeling it had to do with the letter he'd received a few weeks earlier. The letter had been old and yellowed, but the message was clear. It was addressed to his father, and it read, "The well is not cursed, but it does hold secrets." The author also hinted that they had something to do with the well and that they were watching. Who was this person and what did they want? Back at the well, Eric was still standing there with the flashlight in his hand. He had two choices. He could either climb down further or go back up. The bone on the ground made him shudder. What if whoever had fallen in the well hadn't gotten out? What if he was trapped down there now? On the other hand, if he climbed down, he might find a way out or maybe even some answers. He decided to take the latter. Maybe if he went down, he'd get out soon. After all, it couldn't be that deep. After what felt like an hour, Eric finally reached the bottom. It was pitch black and he could hear water dripping from above. But there was no sign of a ladder or stairs. He called out for help, but no one answered. Then he heard a noise. It was coming from behind him. He turned around and saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him. He screamed and ran towards the ladder. He climbed as fast as he could, desperate to get away from those eyes. When he finally reached the top, he scrambled out of the well and ran as far away as he could. At home, Eric couldn't stop thinking about the eyes he'd seen. Were they real, or had he imagined them? Was the well really haunted? Or was it all just a trick of the light? To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Eric down in that well. Some say he managed to escape, while others claim he's still trapped down there with the bones. Scary, isn't it? Well, the story doesn't end there. There's more to the well than meets the eye. And next time you look into its depths, you might just see what's lurking below the surface. So are you brave enough to take the plunge? Now it's time for bed. Sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite. But if you can't sleep because of spooky thoughts that won't stop running through your head, maybe try counting sheep. But watch out for the wolf. Love this episode? Subscribe and tap that bell.